Thank you very much for your time here on CNBC-TV18. It's interesting, I was reading the origins of the company AB InBev all the way back to the 13th, 14th century. You've had quite the history of being a beer maker and in India for 20 plus years. I know it's hard to do, but if you could encapsulate that journey in a few lines.
Well, it's an incredible legacy for any company to have. If you think about the things from history lessons on what was happening in the world in the 13th century.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to think that we have breweries, we have brands that have been around for the better part of this period.
That have been brought into AB InBev's fold over all of these years.
That have really been the starting bricks that allowed for AB InBev to become the company that it is. So we're extremely proud of the legacy of brands that we have. I think it really instills in all of us a sense of humility about the company that we've built, but also the company that we plan to build from here on onwards. And that's where India comes in. India is very much one of the youngest business units within ABI, but one which holds out the maximum promise when you think about the next 25 odd years. And I think there's growing consensus within ABI, not just about India, the country, but the business that we're building here in India. So I think it's a coming together of stars that our global CEO calls the perfect balance between volatility and vitality. So India has always been a volatile place, but now it's got this unique vitality about it that makes the proposition even more exciting.
So how vital is it then to the company? We understand it's your fourth largest market globally, one of the top four for Budweiser as a brand. But given the kind of investments the company has been making, give us a sense of where India stands versus the rest of the world in the larger scheme of things for AB InBev.
Yeah, so we're I think, a testament to the idea of what focus and consistency can do for a business. We came in 2007 as AB InBev with this beautiful proposition, which is Budweiser. If you grew up in the late 90s, you took in Budweiser more as a pop culture phenomena. We looked at the advertising, we looked at what Tom Cruise was doing in Top Gun back in the day when he was doing Great Balls of Fire. We looked at Jim Morrison holding a Budweiser in a concert. And that proposition from the time we've launched it in India has been about keeping this idea of building a premium segment, which did not exist back in 2007, but also the consistency of how we wanted to build Budweiser, which is by becoming the icon of premium, by becoming the icon of culture, and introducing to India, the latest and greatest from the world of music, from sports. Budweiser has been associated with the FIFA World Cup for as long as I can remember, but also what we've been able to do to change the music landscape by bringing this unique voice that Bud has. I think today is a testament of us being in the top 5. We're hungry for more. We do see India having the potential. I wouldn't want to get ahead of myself, but I do think before the end of this decade, we can see Budweiser being a far more bigger brand in India, and by that very yardstick, taking India up the ranks. Who knows?
The
in
top
the next
country,
20 years,
maybe?
the top country as well. We've seen that happen with a few other multinational brands in India. But I think Budweiser has also weaved itself quite intrinsically into the local fabric of Indian culture. So we're excited. But equally what we've been able to do is build a portfolio of brands around Budweiser. So you think Corona, you think Hoegaarden, and I think these with their own unique propositions, Corona just being an absolute favorite for people, not just when you're at the beach, but also when you're thinking about disconnection. And I think for us, the real surprise package has been Hoegaarden. And I know wheat beer, with the advent of brew pubs and everything, was always going to be something of a slow burn, but the excitement people have from the time we've launched Hoegaarden flavors, Hoegaarden Rosé and Hoegaarden Nectarine, I think instills in us a lot of confidence that we've got this beautiful trio of brands in Budweiser, Corona and Hoegaarden that can really shape the next 10 years for us.
We'll get back to this brand building because it's quite interesting for an alcohol company with the restrictions that you have. But I know you don't share India numbers per se, but if you could give us a sense of how growth has been for the India market in terms of revenues, in terms of cases that you're selling, and how it compares to the industry growth for premium brands in India.
Yeah, so the thumb rule we're quite proud of. At any point, AB InBev wants to be 2 times the growth of the industry. So we're talking about mid to high single digits. I'm going to aggregate at an all-India level, but with alcohol being a state-to-state subject, sometimes you have a single source of truth and sometimes you have to rely just on a triangulation of estimates, some government data released and our own sales estimates. But I think if you put the industry at high single digits, we're quite proud that for the better part of this year, we're actually growing 2 times that with closer to 21-22% growth.
Okay.
In some markets, we're actually very high double digits. In some other markets, we're moderately ahead of industry, but if you aggregate our total business, we're growing. But most importantly, we're growing in a manner that is consistent. As I said, with the focus of our portfolio, we're focused on wanting to be the leaders of premium that also grow the premium category in India and not just be leaders of a small pie. And I think our agenda on that front, we seem to be quite satisfied, but still very hungry. So 24 for us is going to be about a year that outpaces whatever we did in 23.
Well, we hope that is the case. But, the last couple of years for the country, for several industries and the beer market is specifically, it's been hard with the pandemic. But we're now kind of over that hump. Has business volume, has it returned back to what you saw, before the pandemic hit?
I would be a little conservative in saying mostly, because we still have markets that aren't quite fully back. And I think the two that stand out for us that equally concern us, one of course is Maharashtra. It's one of the biggest beer states, but I think with the continued increase in duties, particularly on beer, your familiarity with Maharashtra and Mumbai in particular, it is one of the most expensive states in India to go get beer.
Yeah.
It's just incredible how much money people need to shell out to get a bottle of beer. Ironically, it's also now becoming one of the more affordable states when it comes to hard spirits. So products that are above 48% with the import duty cut on anything coming in, particularly in the state of Maharashtra. So that's been a state which has been, I think for us, a little disappointing. We're of course engaging with the government, we're engaging with the relevant authorities to try to see how a beverage of the kind of moderation that beer brings, between 4 to 8%, should be a lot more affordable than somebody going and opting for a glass of whiskey.
Yeah.
Got nothing against whiskey. We just don't think it makes sense.
You just forayed into that segment.
Yeah, very specific segment, but we just don't think it should cost, 2 times more to buy a bottle of beer in equal volume terms than it should on a spirit that contains 48% alcohol. The other state of prominence for us that has been disappointing has been Goa. You would imagine with,
That's a surprise.
revenge tourism and revenge consumption, you would think that people going to Goa would bring the industry back. But again, disappointingly enough, there have been, more headwinds than we would have liked to see. The closure of all nightlife after 10 p.m., you're not allowed to have music out there. You know what Goa means to a lot of Indians. It's the place you go to disconnect. But equally, I think, again, this idea of milking the alcohol segment, beer in particular, by increasing duties, I think kind of takes a little bit of the sting out of what should have been a very sharp recovery post-COVID. So these are the two states that concern us a little bit, but we're engaging with the authorities.
So Maharashtra and Goa. But, you spoke of some of the challenges with taxation, for instance, because the way our taxes are structured, it's not on the basis of the content of alcohol, but more on the volume. Is that the bigger challenge? Or, why do you think that it is that a country like India, with the demographic, advantage that we have, with the weather conditions that we have, which would be a natural market for beer to sell, is not the case here, right? I mean, we still prefer our hard liquor over beer.
Yeah, so, we could theorize this 10 ways to Sunday, and I can assure you we'll come with some very compelling theories, but I think at the heart of it is an abject lack of awareness. I think for a very long time, the bureaucrats who actually craft the policy don't quite differentiate between beer and hard spirits. For them, depending on their own sort of, association with this particular category, we tend to unfavorably get coupled with a product that may have 48% alcohol versus 4% alcohol. Every time we engage and drive the relevant level of education, we find bureaucrats responding extremely positively. A case in point being West Bengal. For a very long period of time, we're talking almost 2 cycles or 2 years, our corporate affairs teams would be in and out of the excise officer's cabin, engaging with other stakeholders, really driving awareness. And the result of that is the government's willingness to consider making taxes on beer lower than spirits. Remarkably, quite to the popular opinion that may have felt that spirits is good for the state exchequer because revenue and tax contributions are different. Not only did we see a significant uptick in consumers drinking more moderate beverages, the beer industry grew close to 90%. But the tax revenues that the state saw grew by 40%. And this for us was a big breaking of a myth.
Thanks to the sheer volume growth.
Well, the volume growth, but also the revenue growth. AB InBev in particular is disproportionately inclined towards premium brands. Our revenues and contributing taxes, I mean, we pay $500 million in taxes across India. I think did break a little bit of a prevailing notion that, if you have to offer alcohol, you'd rather opt for hard spirits, put in structures that limit the sale of beer, make spirits more accessible, relatively speaking. And I think the West Bengal case has shown us that that is not the case. So we're fairly persistent people, and we don't give up easily. So we're going to continue to be in and out of people's offices, driving awareness, driving education, that India should be beer country and not hard spirits country. You
have your first craft beer that you launched recently, Seven Rivers.
Yes.
But how do you assess that segment of the market? Because typically it's been harder to scale, it's been more expensive to produce. Do you think you look to further expand that?
What we're trying to do over here is lead the category, but lead it responsibly. We don't think India is at this point a place where overnight you're going to have everybody switching to wheat beer or ales. Sure. But we do think planting seeds, giving people more experiences, building novelty around the category, decoding certain palate limitations. We find women at times finding beer in some occasions to not quite fit what they'd really like to endorse for that evening. And we found that with Hoegaarden and Hoegaarden flavors in particular, rosé and nectarine, we could actually overcome those barriers. So I think we're going to phase this as we see and understand the category evolution in many other markets. We do have a lot of knowledge from many of our bigger markets, and we hope to tap into that as we think about stewarding this category towards what we think is its destiny, which is to be the biggest alcohol category.
Do you think it can be that in India, given the inherent problems with it? Well, I think we've seen some of the largest players in this segment, for instance, not do so well, and they've been around for a while. I mean, the likes of Bira, for instance, still struggling to, sort of turn profitable.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complex business. It's a very expensive business, I must add. And it's a business that you need a commitment to be with from the 13th century. And if you're looking at wanting to be an overnight operator and you want to cash out at some point, I think this is not the category you'll ever walk away from with a smile on your face. I think this category requires patience. I think it requires persistence. And we're not the overnight operators. We're committed to the idea that we think beer as a category in India is almost a match made in heaven when you think about the demographic advantage I spoke to, when I think about everything you said, the tropical climate. Yeah. You're going to be crazy to think you land in India and people are going, let's go have a whiskey at 2 in the afternoon. 48% alcohol, it's 42 degrees outside, maybe at times 48 degrees outside. It's crazy. On the other hand, you have a cold, moderate beverage that allows you to enjoy the occasion of socializing. So that's our view. We do think at some point craft will also become exciting, but we're being very patient in developing it the right way.
Well, no matter how conducive an environment it may be for beer, you've also felt the need that, the consumption in India for spirits is far higher. In fact, it dominates the market, and therefore you're beyond beer category in your project there. Tell us about that. I mean, what are your plans? You forayed into whiskey, you have your Hoegaarden gin, you have your vodkas, etc. How large a part of business is this going to be?
Yeah, so simplistic and oversimplistic takeout on our commercial moves seemingly may suggest that it's more about spirits in India, and that's why we're sort of expanding our portfolio. This could not be farther from the truth. The reality is the kind of brands we built here with Budweiser, as an example, over the last 15 odd years, always involved listening to consumers and being able to understand what are the other occasions in the consumer's life that we think the relevance of this brand with the kind of equities it's developed. It's a brand for young people. It's a high-quality brand. It's a brand that brings you experiences that make you feel part and parcel of popular culture. But it was always about, liquid superiority, getting the liquid right. We're quite confident with blind tests. We think we've got the best energy drink out there. But again, we're wanting to learn. We're wanting to understand how we can be part of consumers' lives in a more meaningful and a more relevant way.
Okay, on that note, we have to take a break, but don't go anywhere. We're back in a jiffy. Kartik, welcome back. We were talking before the break about building this brand sort of for consumers For an alcohol company, it's not very straightforward with all the restrictions that you have on advertising. So, how do you go about, establishing this brand and this connect with customers, especially when you're launching new products in the market?
Well, so we take a great deal of pride on the multinational we're building here in India, compliance-wise. Do consider ourselves to be a company that has stood the test of time in the last 15 years in figuring out how a multinational can operate despite, the very complex sort of business environment that we have here, at times prone to various kinds of regulatory challenges that could inhibit the business growth. Advertising of alcohol is one such, business complexity. We've been very clear. We want to be respectful of the law of the land. To give you an anecdote, we have internally a measurement of brand love that we call brand power. This is the exact same study we do in all our markets. We're very proud about the idea that while Budweiser in India may be the 4th largest market for the brand, as far as brand power is concerned, India ranks #1, which means the maximum love relative to local consumers is the highest for the brand in India, which also gives us confidence about it being one of our biggest markets in times to come.
Well, speaking of it becoming one of the largest markets in times to come, I know the global companies invested about $1.5 billion here so far. But, could you give us a sense of, how much more is lined up, given the strategic importance of the market? And you were saying perhaps in a decade or so, we could see it becoming one of the top markets.
I think for us, when we talk about the investment outlay for the next 10 to 20 years, I could not be more clearer as the head of the Indian business unit that we have stakeholders outside India who are so sure on the India thesis, if you will, that if we see continued evolution on our policies, namely tax differentiation, which does not club beer and spirits together, namely this idea that, remarkable as it may sound, we pay taxes in advance of our product being sold, which is a terrible amount of working capital intensity for any business. Doesn't matter if it's the business of our size or a business that might be 10 times our size. To be able to shore up that kind of capital in ahead of your sales is just a very lopsided nature of how businesses otherwise in other categories thrive. And then the third, of course, being you remarkably for a population of our size have literally 80,000 points of sale, and you compare that
to FMCG,
where CPG products are sold, and you're talking north of 8 million. I think we feel quite optimistic that these 3 intrinsic barriers for exponential growth, not incremental growth, if slowly but surely we overcome these, structurally at a market level, I think the investments we've made here in the last 10 years would pale to what we'd make in the next 10, 20.
We'd also like to cover what your personal journey here at AB InBev has been like. In 18 years here, you've literally, had an entire adult life working for AB InBev. How does someone, what's it been like?
Well, one word, exciting. 2 words, extremely humbling. This is an amazing company that was love at first sight. But, the test of any long relationship is on how you continue to fester the love. And I think AB InBev has just become a deeper part of not just my life, but my family, my friends. I'm the beer guy for them. I'm the tax guy for them. I'm the cash flow guy for them. The number of times I actually speak on these topics. But most importantly, this is a company that has allowed, I think, for my family to actually be very proud of what I do. And that fills my heart with a lot of joy, that when we extend that same idea across the 2,000 odd people that directly and 5,000 odd people that work indirectly for us here in India. I've heard this anecdotally many times in town halls, many times in skip level meetings and interactions, that whenever they read something unsavory about a certain act, a certain behavior, a certain corporation or an individual in a senior position behaving in a manner that wasn't above board, there is a conversation over a dinner table that goes, we're very happy you're working with AB InBev.
Who is Kartikeya Sharma outside of AB InBev? What more could you tell us?
I'm a guy who loves spending time with my family. I absolutely now unapologetically tell people the first, the most unarguable love of my life is my daughter. She's turned 4. Every single second I can eke out of life, I spend with her. trying to get to know her, trying to have her get to know me. Usually works the other way around. She's probably got the personality that can fill up a room, and so it's just, you know, the honor of my life to be able to get to nurture her and parent her. The second love of my life happens to be this idea of being able to sit down with friends and family and talk about, you know, where the world is going, and talk about, you know, how all of us could be good people. And the third love of my life, in that order, now is AB InBev, which for a very long time was the first love of my life. So,
well, Kartikeya, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you very much for your time here.
thank you very much. Likewise.